that. Unfortunately, I don't think the two draft profiles that we are providing today are going to be right up Alan's wheelhouse here, saying this draft is DL and RB heavy and the Bengals need two guards. So, Alan, buckle up, buddy. We're not going to be talking about guards, and I don't know. I've been asked and blessed with the opportunity to be the person who is making the Bengals pick for the SB Nation National Mock Draft. I think we're going to try and do 2 rounds, actually. And as it stands, I don't think it's been published quite yet. I have made the pick, but one of on the short list, there are a handful of names. Now, just to remind folks, the way the board kind of fell, Walter Nolan went really early. Mike Green went, and a couple of other, Mason Graham, and a couple of other guys that we've talked about. Not too many, of course, predictably Gene T and Abdul Carter and that sort of thing. So, some usual suspects. Mike Green went a little earlier than I think people expected. Nolan went, I think, he was like number 10 or 11 overall. So he went a lot earlier than I had expected. So that, there's a short list of players. Then at 17, obviously I listened to some trade stuff. Didn't really want to do that because the only offer I really received that was a decent one would have had me trade out of the first round over, as a whole for the Bengals, and I didn't really want to do that. So one of the guys that I thought about and researched in making this pick was a defensive lineman, another defensive lineman, and that is Oregon. And I know, West Coast, I know, but if you've paid attention, this is one of the guys that has been talked about with the Cincinnati Bengals and their potential interest. A guy who is tall, big, and plays kind of all over the line a little bit, depending on the front and formation. I really like this guy. I waver between if I like him more than Walter Nolan or not. I like the profile. I worry a little bit of, okay, is he, isn't he? Positionally, right? Is he this? Is he that? Can he be a true 3-tech? Can he be a Geno Atkins disruptor? But this last, and he's a little older, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But this last year he was a transfer to Oregon, and he had a really nice season with Oregon, and he should be around when the Bengals pick at 17, and is probably one of the guys they are eyeing at that spot. Obviously, you need to get some more. I know they got Chris Jenkins Jr. in the second round last year, and obviously McKinley Jackson, and they brought in TJ Slayton. So they've done some things over the past couple of seasons for the defensive line, but they need that interior pass rush. They need that true interior disruptor. I think that this guy can be that. And I'll show you some things here. This is one with this on the film, I'm going to go, kind of back and slower. The other guy, I'm going to try and play at full speed, and you'll see why in just a second. But Derrick Harmon, really, really intriguing player for the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm going to pull up this video for you here. On the profile, looks every bit the part, right? And big dude, built really well, moves really well, like I said. And sometimes you'll see on some of these clips, I think that he has played edge and 3-man front sometimes, and then of course he's on the interior, and he's more like 6'5", 311, and close to 22. He had 45 tackles, 5 sacks, 11 tackles for loss. This is all last year. 4 passes defended, which is the old Carlos Dunlap, big boy, getting the big arms up there. 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries. So he's disruptive in a lot of different ways, which you like. Causing turnovers, causing sacks, a lot of other tackles for loss in general. Just a solid resume coming into this year's draft class. You can see gets pushed back a little bit, but sheds the block, makes a nice play, right? And then again, we're starting with run plays, by the way. You see here again, kind of gets lost in the wash a little bit, but gets in there, makes a nice tackle against Michigan. You see here, here he is off the edge, kind of goes unblocked, makes the quarterback sack in conjunction with another player there. And then this is, I believe this is a pretty big play here. You can see here, beats on the inside and creates an incompletion there. It's this one. This is a big play right here. Causes the forced fumble on Arizona State. And then there's one more coming in here again, kind of almost gets held by the helmet, still gets in there, makes the play on the quarterback there. Just disruptive, right? Disruptive, and a guy that, whether it's against the run or the pass, just makes a lot of different plays. And I think that he would provide a lot of value for the Bengals. May not be the top name on a lot of people's list, but at 17, position of need, etc., that is, I like him.
I like him too. I think Derrick Harmon ran a 4.95 40-yard dash at 6'4.5", 313 pounds. So he was very content with that time at that size. It's a great size-speed combination, especially for a penetrating pass rushing 3 technique. He didn't test other than that, so he has an incomplete RAS if you guys really abide by that. But I think on tape though, like the explosion is definitely there. The first step get off is there. And I think the bend is there too in terms of, you know, getting under guards pads and kind of with the flexation with his lower half. And that's important, obviously, for not just edge rushers, but defensive tackles who are kind of starting in those wide alignments too. So if you have a guy like Harmon who can have that length as a 3 technique to keep himself separated from pass blockers and guards in general, and then you can create space and kind of flatten around the pocket to the quarterback, that's obviously very important. Everything about him and his process as a pass rusher is very promising. One of the best pass rushing win rates out of this entire class, which is why he's getting a lot of first round hype. I think as far as his character goes and the person that he is, there's been nothing but green flags there as well. He was a transfer player to Oregon, so he started off in Michigan State, and then obviously Oregon had just billions of dollars in NIL money to just attract a phenomenal roster that ended up being the number 1 team in the country, and he was part of that, along with Jamari Caldwell, who was a phenomenal nose tackle who played next to that entire Oregon defensive line was great, right? And it worked for Harmon because he had a lot of pressure, he had a lot of disruption. My concern with him is that he didn't always translate that production or pressure into actual production behind the backfield or in the backfield. Only I think a handful of sacks to go with 55 pressures for the season. It's a bit of a discrepancy there, and as far as like just tackling in general, like there were a lot of missed tackles on tape as well. I think it has one of the highest missed tackle rates out of this entire interior defensive lineman class. So I think in overall, there's a lot of promise, which makes him someone that you would consider in the back half of the first round. A complete player, I think he's not quite yet because there's a lot of flags in his run defense in terms of actually finishing, wrapping up guys. And that's just kind of littered all over his tape. But I think, Anthony, when you're talking about inserting this guy within the Bengals defensive line, when you have sure tacklers like BJ Hill and TJ Sladen, who are starting at defensive tackle for you, when you have a guy like Trey Hendrickson who can finish better than any other edge rusher in the entire league in terms of generating pressures into sacks, I think when you have someone like Harmon who can cause disruption up the middle and create opportunities for other guys to clean up that production, that's a good fit for him compared to a lot of other landing spots that he could have in the NFL. I think the whole conversation, the debate, though, is that do you want to select a guy like Harmon who may not be that complete player because he doesn't always finish up the production on his own? Do you want to select that guy in the first round instead of seeing if he does fall? Because he's probably not going to fall to that mid-second round pick, but I think that's the debate with him, is that do you take that risk to see if a player like that, if other teams are concerned about maybe the incompleteness of his profile as well?
But yes, a transfer from Michigan State, went on to Oregon. There are flaws, but there's a lot of, and we've seen these Oregon guys on the interior in the NFL thrive, right? We've seen a number of these guys do that. And I do think that whether it is like a Haloti Ngata or, I think Eric Armstead was a former Oregon Duck, the fact that they played some edge on 3-man front, and then they also kicked inside and did some different things. I think that suits them well in terms of effectiveness at the pro level. But again, a big guy, different build, if you're looking for kind of that Geno Atkinsy guy. I mean, Geno was, right around 6 foot and 300. This guy's, like I said, more like 6'5" and 311. So apologize for the error on the one graphic there, but still, I think you get the gist of what this guy brings. He does make some plays against the run. And what struck me again on some of those plays is, yeah, there was a couple of times where you could say, is that a loss? I don't know in terms of the block, but still got in there and made the tackle for a minimal gain. The missed tackles and other things obviously are concerning, but that is, I think he would be a solid addition to what the Bengals are trying to do up front.
Yeah, I think he's going to be an effective player in the NFL. I have a lot of thoughts about how we look at potential when it comes to draft prospects, but I think there is enough positives to Derrick Harmon's profile where you could justify taking him in the back half of the first round. Obviously, the Bengals are at the beginning of the back half of the first round, so I'm interested to see what the board would have to look like for them to take him. I think that he would be in kind of a similar bucket as some other players that have some, minor question marks, but I think in terms of a quote unquote safe pick, he is proven as someone that knows what he's doing as a pass rusher. He can win one-on-one situations. And honestly, Anthony, outside of the guard spot, I think that's the biggest weakness on this roster. If this defense is in 3rd and 8, who are your 4 pass rushers rushing the quarterback? It's Trey Hendrickson. I guess it's BJ Hill. It's Joseph Osai or Miles Murphy. Who is the other defensive tackle? I don't think you trust anyone else on the roster right now in those situations. You can insert Harmon right there, even if he only plays like 15 snaps a game, because it is going to be a very deep defensive tackle room. You still need an X factor there that can win on his own, and you can kind of trust just kind of leaving him to his own devices and winning that matchup for other guys to end up finishing and cleaning up. So I think it makes a lot of sense for this year and obviously beyond, because they don't really have that proven disruptor at 3 technique. And I think that's going to be a position and a role that they fill very early in the draft.